Many years ago, there was a very popular compound in Adeni Uklo named C Compound. In that compound lived a woman called Moyo Adi, who was the engine of the compound. See, if something happened in that compound and Moyo Adi did not talk about it, then it did not really happen. The compound itself was not small. It was one long building with several rooms facing each other, one narrow passage, one shared tap, one toilet with a door that never locked properly, and one public generator that only worked when people started fighting about it. Well, everybody knew everybody there, and even when you didn't know, Moya would explain to you. Every morning before the sun fully stood up, Moya was already awake. Not because she was hard-working, nah, but because information does not sleep. She would tie her wrapper firmly, wear her slippers that made noise, carry her buckets, and walk majestically to the tap like a town crier. As soon as she arrived, people would start coming out. "Moyo, good morning." No. Mama Cootie, the caretaker, would greet, already smiling. "Good morning." No, Moya would reply, adjusting her wrapper and clearing her throat like a woman about to preach. By the time the tap started running, gist had already started flowing. "Have you heard?" Moy would say casually, as if she was talking about the weather. "Heard what?" Blessing, the young girl from room 6, would ask eagerly. Moy would lean closer and lower her voice slightly, even though everybody was already listening. "That man in room 2, Uncle Coon, he did not go to work yesterday." "Oh, and so?" Blessing would ask. "So," Moy would repeat dramatically, "that is how it starts now." Mama Cootie would shake her head slowly. "I always said that man likes staying at home too much." "Exactly," Moy would say, nodding hard. "And his wife went to the market very early." "Very early?" Blessing's eyes would widen. "You don't mean it." "I didn't say anything, oh," Moy would reply quickly. "I am just observing." Now that was Moyer's favorite line. "I am just observing." By the time the buckets were filled, everybody already knew that Uncle Coon was either cheating, jobless, or hiding something serious. If a child cries too much in that compound, Moya knew why. If someone cooked stew with too much pepper, Moya knew the reason. If lights blinked twice, Moya could connect it to somebody's destiny. Unfortunately, her husband Shola hated it. Every morning as she picked up her bucket, he would warn her, "Moyo, please don't start again today." "Start what?" Moya would ask innocently. "Your radio station." Moya would laugh loudly. I am just talking now." Shola would sigh. "Your talking causes trouble." But Moya would wave her hand dismissively and say, "If people don't want their matter outside, they should behave now." That sentence was her constitution and justification. One afternoon, rain fell heavily and power went out. On top of that, the public generator refused to start, and boredom entered the compound like a thief. But that was when Moy truly shined. She sat on the bench near the corridor and began. "Do you people notice that Mama Cootie locked her door early yesterday?" Mama Cootie jumped up. "Why are you watching my door?" "I am not watching." "No," Moy replied. "I just notice things." Blessing giggled. "Moy notices everything." "Yes, so," Moyo said proudly, "that is my gift." Shala walked past and shook his head. "One day, your gifts will return." Moya laughed. "Return where now?" "To the sender." The compound laughed with her, and they continued to enjoy her gifts until one evening when a moving van stopped outside. Everybody came out curious to know what was happening. "Who is moving?" "A new tenant." "Which room?" Moyo stood up immediately, her interest activated. "Who is coming?" Mama Cootie squinted. "It should be room 9, that one that has been empty since." The door opened and a woman stepped down. She greeted them all. "Good evening." "Good evening." "Oh." "Which continent?" they replied. Moyo studied her carefully from head to toe and squinted because she believed new people always came with stories. "What is your name?" Moyo asked boldly. "Zanab," the woman replied with a small smile. Where are you coming from? Moyo asked again. Zanab smiled again. From where I was before? Everyone laughed. Moyo frowned slightly. That did not answer the question. Zanab ignored her, picked up her bag, and walked into her room quietly. But Moyo watched her go and said, Quiet people have the loudest secrets. Shola grabbed her. Please don't start, oh. Moyo smiled. Uh-huh. I am just observing now. Unknown to Zanab, she had entered a compound ruled by gossip, and her silence had already offended the queen of gossip. Normally, Zanab's silence should not be strange, but in that particular compound, silence was suspicious, because if you did not talk, people assumed you were either hiding something or planning something, and Moyo noticed it immediately, from the second morning after Zanab moved in. Moy started paying attention to her. Zanab woke up early, swept her frontage neatly, greeted everybody politely, and minded her business too well. She did not fight for water, she did not complain about the toilet, she did not shout at anybody's child, and worst of all, she did not ask questions. Now, Moy did not like that. At the tap that morning, Moyo arrived as usual with her buckets and confident impact. Blessing was already there, scrubbing her bucket noisily. Moy, good morning. No, Blessing said. Good morning, Moy replied. Has our new tenant freshed water today? Blessing nodded. Yes. Oh, she came earlier. Moy raised her eyebrows. So she has started waking up early like an old tenant. Blessing had not even finished nodding when Zanab herself appeared, carrying an empty bucket, and greeted, Good morning. Mama Cootie quickly replied, Good morning. Moy looked at her closely and said, Good morning, hope you slept well. Yes, Zanab replied with her usual smile. No complaints? Which continent? No unnecessary explanation, just yes. Moyo cleared her throat and said, You didn't hear generator noise last night? Zanab shook her head. No. Moyo waited to hear more, but nothing else followed. Blessing shifted uncomfortably and asked, So you don't have a problem with the generator? Zanab smiled and said, It works well. That was all. Moyo frowned slightly. This one is economical with words. Zanab smiled again and bent to fetch water. As she fetched, Moyo started her lecture. You see this compound? Everybody here is like family. We talk to each other. Zanab nodded. That is good. Moyo waited to hear more, but nothing else followed. She continued, So we don't hide anything. Zanab nodded again. That is healthy. Moyo's mouth parts mid-sentence. Healthy? Blessing giggled nervously. Mama laughed. This girl is so calm. Yes, Moyo said slowly. Very calm. However, from that day, Moya decided to educate Zanab. But education in that compound did not involve books. It involved jest. One afternoon, while Zanab was sweeping, Moy sat close to her. You know that Blessing in room 6? Moy began casually. Zanab nodded. She's young. Moy leaned closer. Exactly. Too young to be receiving visitors every night. Zanab stopped sweeping and looked at her. Oh, that was it? Just, oh. But Moy ignored and continued. I am not saying anything, oh. I'm just saying we should watch her. Zanab nodded slowly. That is kind. Blinked. Another day, Moy tried again, while they sat outside during a blackout one evening. She leaned in toward Zanab and said, You know Mama Kuri, she pretends as if she doesn't hear things. Zanab nodded. She hears. Moyo smiled. That is what I am saying. But Zanab did not say anything again. She didn't even nod, and Moy felt strangely unsatisfied. Usually by now, the other person would have added Pepe, like, she's wicked though. She's pretending. She likes money too much. But Zanab only listened. Yet somehow, Moy became comfortable, very comfortable with gossiping with her. After all,
Zanab never interrupted her. She never corrected and never judged her. She just listened like a sponge, sucking everything in. Her eyes stayed calm, her face stayed neutral, and her mouth stayed quiet. So that made Moyo talk more. Soon, Zanab became Moyo's favorite audience. Moy talked while Zanab cooked. Moy talked while Zanab washed. Moy talked while Zanab folded clothes. "Do you know that my husband is not talking to his brother again?" Moy said one afternoon. Zanab paused. "No." "Well, it is because of Landmar," Moyo said confidently. "Oh, land brings out people's true color," Moyo added. Zanab nodded. "Yes, it does." Moyo smiled proudly. Another time she told Zanab, "You know that woman in room 4? That light-skinned one?" Zanab nodded. Moyo continued. "She borrowed money and hasn't returned it," Zanab exclaimed. "Oh, she's even avoiding the lender," Moyo added. "Oh," Zanab said. Moy laughed. "It seems you are naturally very quiet." Zanab smiled. "I am learning." That sentence settled strangely in Moy's chest, but she ignored it. And then something strange started to happen in the compound. People began to repeat gists differently. Blessing came one morning and said, "Moyo, is it true that Uncle was chased from work?" Moy frowned. "Who told you that?" Zanab said she heard it. Moy laughed. "I didn't say chased, I said he stayed home." Blessing shrugged. That's how she explained it, Shah." Moy waved her hand. People like exaggeration. Later that day, Mama Cootie casually mentioned, "They say Shola and his brother are fighting seriously." Moy froze. "Who said?" Mama Cootie shrugged. People are saying it." Moy laughed nervously. People talked too much. However, that night, Shah asked her, "Moyo, why is my office calling me to ask about my family problems?" Moy laughed loudly. "Office? Who told them anything?" "They said it came from our compound." Moy waved her hand. "Don't mind them. People exaggerate things." Zainab looked at her and said, "Moyo, you talk too much." Moy smiled. "I just talk small." The next day, Moyo was passing by when she saw Zainab at the center of a small gathering. She was not shouting or laughing loudly, she was simply talking. "And that is why it is good to be careful with people's matters," she said. People listened and nodded. Moya stopped in her tracks. Zainab continued, "I heard that some people say Uncle Kunle's wife is now the breadwinner. It is really sad." People gasped. Moy's heart skipped. She walked closer and asked, "Zainab, who told you that?" Zainab smiled and said, "I heard it's around." Around where?" Moy asked. Zainab tilted her head slightly. "Yeah." Moy laughed. "You people like stories." Zainab nodded. "Yes, I noticed too." Unfortunately for her, that evening, Moyo heard something that made her sit down immediately. Blessing whispered to her, "They said you're the one spreading everything." Moy sat down and laughed awkwardly. "Me? I am just observing." "Oh," Blessing hesitated, "but Zanab says that is how information flows here." Moy frowned. What exactly did she say? Blessing innocently replied, "She said, I thought that was how we communicate here." That sentence echoed hard. Communicate. Moy laughed it off, but that night sleep avoided her. She replayed all their conversations. She remembered Zanab's nods, her silence and calmness. Zanab had never argued, denied, or added lies. She had simply carried the words forward. The next morning, Moy watched Zanab closely as she swept. She approached her and said, "You are very quiet." Zanab smiled. "I only listen." Moy laughed awkwardly. "Listening too much can be dangerous." Zanab looked up and smiled. "So can talking." For the first time since Zanab arrived, Moy felt uneasy. She feared that she might have been dethroned without knowing. And then she confirmed it on a Wednesday morning at the tap. Normally, once she arrived, buckets would gather around her like audience. Faces would turn to her and somebody would ask, "Moyo, what's the latest?" But that morning, people were already talking before she even reached. They were not just even talking, but also listening. Zanab was standing near the tap. Her bucket was already full, but she was talking clearly. "I am not saying it is true, I'm just repeating what people are already saying," she said. Moyo stopped walking and stretched her ears. "What are they saying?" Blessing asked eagerly. Zanab shrugged lightly, and they said that some people talk about others too much. Everyone laughed. Moyo stepped closer and asked loudly, "Who said that?" Everyone turned to her. Zanab smiled, that same small, respectful smile. "Good morning, Moyo," she said. "Good morning," Moyo replied stiffly. "What were you saying?" Zanab tilted her head. "Nothing serious, so just observation." Moyo's chest tightened. How come? That was her line. Observation. She stood there awkwardly for a moment and then laughed nervously. "You people like gist too much," she said, but nobody laughed with her. Later that afternoon, Moyo heard laughter from near Makud's room. She followed the sound as curiosity led her like a rope, and there she saw Zanab talking again. "I heard that one woman knows everybody's business except her own," Zanab was saying calmly. Akun, the welder from Lane 5, laughed loudly. "That one is powerful." Moyo stepped forward and asked sharply, "Zanab, are you talking about me?" Zanab looked genuinely surprised. "Why would I do that?" "Because everybody is looking at me," Moyo said. Zanab raised her hand lightly. "I didn't mention your name, Mol." The neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Mama cleared her throat and said, "Let's not fight." But Moyo's voice rose. "Then why are my words moving around without me?" Zanab blinked slowly. "Your words?" Moyo froze. "Yes, what do you mean?" Zanab spoke carefully. "I thought that was how things work here. You say something, people hear, and people repeat it." Moy laughed nervously. "You are twisting things." Zanab nodded. "Maybe." Unfortunately, that evening, the carpet started buzzing like a disturbed beehive with Moy said this. "No, Zanab said that, but Moy started it, no?" Miraculously, the gist had multiplied, and it was no longer controlled.
Then the real blow landed 2 days later. Shola returned from work quietly, and they ate in silence. Finally, he spoke up. "My boss asked me today if I was having problems at home." Moyo dropped her spoon in shock. "Problems? What problems?" Shola looked at her carefully. "They said you usually shout at me that I am tired of marriage." Moyo suddenly stood up. "Who said that?" Shola closed his eyes. "They said it is common knowledge." Moyo's mouth went dry. She rushed outside immediately, and people scattered as she came out, ending their conversations mid-sentence. She went straight to Zanab's room and knocked hard. "Zanab!" Zanab opened the door calmly. "Yes? What are you telling people about me?" Moyo asked. Zanab looked confused. "About you?" "Yes," Moyo said. Zanab sighed softly. "Moyo, I have only been repeating what I hear." Moyo laughed bitterly. "And where do you hear it from?" Zanab looked at her eyeball to eyeball this time and said, "From you." Silence fell between them. Moyo breathed hard. "You are doing this on purpose, right?" Zanab shook her head gently. "No, I am just communicating." Moyo's hands shook. "You are enjoying this, right?" Moyo shrugged. "I am just understanding it."
Then the real blow landed 2 days later. Shola returned from work quietly, and they ate in silence. Finally, he spoke up. "My boss asked me today if I was having problems at home." Moyo dropped her spoon in shock. "Problems? What problems?" Shola looked at her carefully. "They said you usually shout at me that I am tired of marriage." Moyo suddenly stood up. "Who said that?" Shola closed his eyes. "They said it is common knowledge." Moya's mouth went dry. She rushed outside immediately, and people scattered as she came out, ending their conversations mid-sentence. She went straight to Zainab's room and knocked hard. "Zainab!" Zainab opened the door calmly. "Yes?" "What are you telling people about me?" Moyo asked. Zainab looked confused. "About you?" "Yes," Moyo said. Zainab sighed softly. "Moyo, I have only been repeating what I hear." Moyo laughed bitterly. "And where do you hear it from?" Zainab looked at her eyeball to eyeball this time and said, "From you." Silence fell between them. Moya breathed hard. "You are doing this on purpose, right?" Zainab shook her head gently. "No, I'm just communicating." Moya's hands shook. "You are enjoying this, right?" Moya shrugged. "I am just understanding it." She experienced what it felt like to be talked about instead of being listened to, and it hurts more than she ever imagined because hearing your story from another mouth is painful, but hearing it narrated better is even more unbearable. By the end of that week, Moyen no longer needed anybody to tell her that she had fallen. She could feel it in the way greetings had changed. Moya, good morning, had now turned into, oh, good morning. No. People no longer stopped what they were doing when she passed. Buckets did not pause mid-air, and conversations did not slow down for her. Instead, voices dropped when she appeared, not because they feared her, but because they were tired of her. Now that hurt more than any insult. One morning, Moya woke up early out of habit because her body still believed she was important. She tied her wrapper tightly, carried her buckets, and walked to the tap with the same confidence she had worn for years. But the tap was already crowded. Zanab stood there, calm as ever, listening as Blessing talked. "So I just told her to mind her business," so Blessing was saying. Zanab nodded. "That is wise." Moyo cleared her throat loudly, but nobody turned. She cleared it again, and Mama Cootie glanced briefly, nodded, and continued her conversation. Moyo felt heat rise to her face. "So this is how it is now, Abi," she said aloud. Zanab slowly turned and said, "Good morning, Moy." "Good morning," Moy replied stiffly. "Hope I am not disturbing your meeting, chair lady." Zanab smiled gently. "We are just chatting," she said. "Chatting, not gisting." Now that word stung. Embarrassed, Moyo fetched her water quietly and left without saying another word, but her buckhead felt heavier than usual, or maybe it was her pride that added the weight. Back in her room, Shala watched her suspiciously. "You didn't stalk this morning," he said. Moyo dropped the bucket and sat down heavily. "They've replaced me." Shala raised his eyebrows. "Replace you as what?" She looked at him sharply. "You know, why are you pretending?" Shala sighed and sat beside her. "Moyo, I warned you," Moyo snapped. "So now it's my fault, Abi?" Shala nodded. "It has always been your mouth." That sentence landed like a slap. She stood up angrily and stormed out. Outside the compound,
Storytelling Moyo heard laughter, but not the usual careless laughter. This one was light, relaxed, and free. Moyo followed the sound until she reached the corridor near room 9. She saw Zanab sitting on a bench there. She was not even talking much, but people were talking around her, asking questions and filling the silence themselves. "Zanab, is it true that Uncle Coon is traveling? I heard from Mama Cootie that the landlord wants to increase rent. They said generator 4 finished again." Zanab responded carefully. "I don't know. Let's ask her directly. Maybe it is not true." And each answer made people trust her more. Moyo felt dizzy. She stepped forward and asked, "Zanab, why are you enjoying this?" The compound went quiet. Zanab looked up confused. "Enjoying what?" "You know exactly what you are doing," Moyo said. "You came here and took over." Zanab stood up slowly. "I didn't take anything," she said. "You dropped it." Moyo laughed bitterly. "So now you are wise." Zanab nodded once. "I learned from you." Moyo choked on her tears. "You repeated my words and destroyed my name." Zanab shook her head. "No, your words just meant distance." Mama stepped forward cautiously. "Moyo, it's enough." Moyo turns to her. "Ah, you too." Mama shook her head and sighed. "You turned people's lives into stories."
Now your own life became one. How does it feel? Moya felt something collapse inside her. She suddenly remembered every laughter she had enjoyed, every secret she had carried and dropped carelessly, every "I am just observing." And now observation had turned around and observed her. She slowly turned and walked back to her room. That night, Moy lay on her bed staring at the ceiling as others laughed and discussed outside without her. For the first time in years, she had nothing to say. She felt outnumbered. And then, the next morning, something unexpected happened. Moy swept her frontage quietly. People noticed immediately. She fetched water without commentary.
People noticed too. She greeted Zanab politely. Zanab replied kindly without any sarcasm, and that confused Moy more than an insult would have. Later that day, Mama Kuri called her. Moyo, come and sit. Moy obeyed. You see, Mama continued, the mouth is like a generator. It is useful, but if you run it all day, it spoils. Moy nodded slowly. I thought talking made me relevant. Mama smiled sadly. No, listening does. In the evening, Moy overheard two women talking near the gates. They were saying things like, that Moyo used to talk too much, but she has changed though. Let's just hope it's last. Moy paused and sighed deeply, but she did not step forward to defend herself. She just walked away, and behind her,